we have now looked at editing stuff, importing stuff. Exporting is the last part that we haven't really got into too much. We went over it a little bit last week, and most of what you need is in there. I'm going to briefly run over the exporting process that we'll need to do for assignment 2, and later on we will get into more of the nitty-gritty about the different file formats and advantages and disadvantages and whatever. So I'm just going to go in here and export this image here, library tab, down bottom left, export. It remembers my settings from the last time I exported anything. So I'm going to call this Firewall Brad sample export 2400 pics. So remember that it's going in that export folder within the same folder as your Lightroom catalog. So if I go to my Finder or my external hard drive, wherever I've stored it, there is PH152, right? My folder that has my catalog in it. There's that export folder. There's that raw folder. Raw folder has all of my source material. The export folder has everything that I have exported out to give to somebody else. And I'm putting it in subfolders basically by whenever I'm spitting it out to give to someone, right? So I might have one for one client, one for revisions to the same client, one for a second client, one for mom, one for social, etc., etc. We had demo last time. This is me doing sample export this time. So that's correct. Put in subfolder sample export. This is correct. Put in that overall export folder. Existing files, right? If I've already done it, I don't want to override it immediately. It will ask me, which is polite. Rename them. I'm going to rename them just so that we can get a sense when we're looking at that file what our settings were, because we won't necessarily be able to tell otherwise. So sample export 2400 pixels. I'm going to do this as if I were saving it for assignment 2, so a JPEG. Resize to fit the long edge, 2400 pixels. Sharpen for screen, that's fine. So the big variable here is quality. For something that I'm turning in, I'm going to put it at 100%. We'll try that first. Again, quality, that 100% quality, that's how much compression it's doing, right? So the most quality is the least compression. Go ahead and export that. I'm going to go right back into the export thing. I'm going to export it at 85 quality. All right, change the name. Also important, change the actual quality. All right, export there, come back in, hit it a third time. I'm going to export it at 50 quality, change the name, change the quality. And last, I'm going to export it at 0. Okay, so the thing to remember, all of these images have the same number of pixels, right? Every time I hit export, it had resize to fit, long edge, 2400 pixels. So same number of pixels inside, same number of dots. The only thing that we changed was how much compression it was applying to that file as it went out. So let's see what they look like here. So here we are in my export folder, sample export. There are those 1, 2, 3, 4 files ranging from 0 quality to 100 quality. And let's look first at the amount of space they take up on my hard drive. So the 0 quality one is 86K, that is teeny tiny. The 50 quality one is 225K, more or less. 85% is 1.1 megabytes, and 100% is almost double that at 1.9 megabytes. So huge range in how much space they take up in your email, on your hard drive, etc. Again, same number of pixels, every single time, just a matter of the amount of compression. Now let's look at them and see if we can tell the difference. So popped up on my screen, this is being viewed, let's say actual size. So this is at basically 100%. I'm going to go through each of them and set them the same level of magnification and zip over to this one corner. So we're kind of looking at the same thing in each of these files. Now, the first thing, if I look at the lowest quality one, I can really tell the difference, right? I see the sort of blotchiness, and I'm hoping it shows up in the video, blotchiness in the gray background as I look at the edge here. I'm just going to zoom in so it's a little clearer. There's all this like weird speckliness and discoloration. Not great. So even, essentially, the naked eye looking at it at 100%, that doesn't look great. The 50% one, looking at it at regular magnification, doesn't really look that different, right? If you pass this on a website, would you notice? Probably not, right? If I zoom way in, yeah, I can see some like big square blotches down here. But unless I print it out, I'm probably not going to notice. Remember, that's 50%. And that was a 200 kilobyte, not megabyte, 200K file. 85% looks, frankly, perfect, even zoomed in. And the 100% one looks almost indistinguishable from the 85% one. So again, that compression, if you're just viewing them on a screen, sending them to your friends, emailing them, putting them on a website, a little bit of compression is going to cut down the amount of space they take up. It will increase how quickly they load. And from 85 to 100, right? 100 was almost twice the size of the 85% one. And yet, even I, a notoriously picky person, cannot tell the difference between them looking at them on my screen. So for the stuff you're turning in for me, I would say probably 100% is the best thing to do. Certainly anything you ever think about printing, you shouldn't be doing a JPEG anyway, but leaving that aside, 100% is the only way to go. But for something that's like quick send off to grandma, or I need to send 50 thumbnails to somebody to make a quick selection from in an email, using 50%, you'll still be able to tell what the picture is. That's what I'm saying. It won't look completely terrible, and it will be much, much, much smaller and easier to deal with as far as the amount of disk space or bandwidth that it's taking up. So that's it for exporting JPEGs, where the big variable is that quality level. I'm going to do one more export, and that's going to be exporting a Tiff. So I've said several times, like, don't print a JPEG, don't print a JPEG. And you're like, well, Brad, what do I frickin' print? Like, come on. You want to print from a Tiff, right? And again, we're not printing right now. We will print later, but in general, we want to print from a Tiff. They're going to have no compression, right? You could put some on there. Don't put any on there. They are a universally accessible format in the same way that a JPEG is. Anybody can open it. So TIFFs are great. I'll show you the downside. Keeping it the same size, right? Same number of pixels. Each one of these images has had the same number of pixels. And I'm going to get rid of that quality indicator because they're all the same. TIFF quality is all the same. And hit export. So the downside of the TIFF is that if I look at it here, it is 11 megs. So the TIFF is not something you want to email to a bunch of people. It's not something you want to put on a website. The TIFF is solely something where you are giving it to an imaging professional to make a print. That's what the TIFF is for. If you're doing desktop publishing, you're putting it into a book, TIFF is great. If you are trying to send 5 pictures to a client on email for quick approval, unless they have specifically asked for it, and if they have asked for it, give it to them. Unless they've specifically asked for it, do not send them a TIFF, because you will be sending them an enormous amount of data. won't fit in an email, will clog things up. You'll end up with, like, especially if they're old people, they'll be like, "Hey, the files, man." So that is my brief thing on exporting. Again, remember, we want to make sure that we export to the right location, which is in that export folder, right? In the same folder that all of our Lightroom stuff is. We want to make sure that we put it in a subfolder that is related to what we're exporting it for, right? Assignment 1, assignment 2, grandma, social media, whatever it is. And then we want to make sure that we choose a file format and, if applicable, compression level that is appropriate. For me, right, if I'm asking for JPEGs, give me 100%, 85%. For clients, right, ask them what they want. For emailing to people, you can drop it down a little bit lower if you are sending a lot of them. And for printing, you're going to send a TIFF, and it'll be a big file, but it will have very high image quality. Okay, so that is my little blurb on exporting. We will get much more into the other variables in there, color spaces, different formats, resizing, all that stuff. But for the moment, we're going to leave it there. Cool. Good luck.